What's up, folks? It's me again with another video on my M1 Garand conversion from the WE M14. A lot of people have been asking me to do another video on particulars about the build, so just a little bit more in-depth detail about how I went about it. So I've got my M1 here. I've currently got it in its M1D configuration, so I 3D printed a barrel mounting block here and a scope mount for like a really cheap 4x20 air rifle scope, which I've modded to look a little bit like an M84 telescopic sight. It's probably actually got better glass in it than an M84, to be fair. You can get replica M84s, but they are ludicrously expensive, and I can't find anywhere that ships to the UK. So there we are. We've got the stock pad on it there as well. The reason for the M1D is that I'm doing a US Marine Corps loadout for the Vietnam War, and these were used as the primary sniper rifle of the Marine Corps in the early days of Vietnam, before it was replaced with the M40A1. Anyway, enough about that. So yeah, it uses so just to go over it again, it uses a WE M14 gas blowback rifle. The stock is from an ICS M1 Garand. I use that because the ICS M1 Garand is slightly deeper than a real M1 Garand because of the gearbox and the magazine gubbins and all that. For the normal M1 Garand build, it's got it's got a real M1 Garand upper handguard and cap, real M1 Garand stock ferrule, and lower band, plus when it's in its normal M1 Garand configuration it's got a real M1 lower handguard, and that's held in place usually with the WE handguard retaining spring because the real M1 Garand one that I had was rusted to buggery and used to man nor beast. But at the moment it's got I've just made a plywood upper handguard there that's just held on by tension between the between the stock band and the mounting block there, so it pops off, but it's really quite stiff. The gas tube and front sight assembly are from an M1 Garand made by ICS. Again, I wasn't too sure on using real M1 gas cylinder parts because in the UK our firearms laws are pretty strict on that. Just make sure I don't smack it off the chimney breast. The butt plate is a real M1 Garand butt plate, as is the sling swivel and the sling swivel screw. If I open up the compartment, that's got a Mancraft regulator in there that's connected up to Mancraft CO2 capsule adapter, and we'll have a look at that in a little bit. But if I break the rifle down, it's got nothing in it, there's no gas or anything, so the regulator's not got anything in it, so it is safe. It's not cocked anyway. We just flip it. A little bit finicky because it's a custom gun and all that jazz. So trigger unit, and the stock and lower assembly. Now that there is a WE M14 magazine that has been cut down quite substantially, and you can see here there's the airline that connects it, that goes through into the stock where the motor would be on a real, well, sorry, on an ICS M1 Garand. And yeah, it's got a 90-degree elbow pneumatic fitting on the bottom there. As you see, I've had to take, I don't know if you can see that, but all of that light wood on the inside I've had to take out of the stock in order to make room for the op rod. So this is the upper assembly. You can see there now, this op rod I cut down, like it's about half the length it was when it started off. It's because on the M14 it extends to about maybe there, so I cut half of it off just so that it wouldn't interfere. I mean, I wasn't originally intending to put another like tube insert into here, so that it would look like so you could actually see the op rod, which you'd be able to see on a real M1 Garand, but that was just a faff and I decided not to. And anyway, that on the end there, I don't know if you can see that, but that is like it's an 11mm plumbing olive, brass pipe olive, that's just press fitted into the end of the operating rod. The internals are all standard WE M14, haven't made any changes at all. Well, with the exception of taking out the selector switch here and filling over it with some Isopon P38 automotive body filler for cars. The other change, I suppose, to the receiver is I actually reshaped the upper here. You know, it's basically using a body filler again, just built up around the area, put in a fake clip ejection latch here. So on the real one, as if you had a fully loaded on-block clip or partially loaded, you could retract the bolt and then press the clip ejection, and it would drop your drop your ammo without you having to shoot it off. Right, okay, so that's the upper there, which I'm gonna stick on my lap just now. Trigger unit is modified. So the WE OEM trigger units are pretty bad, really. You have to, you either have to modify it like I've done, or buy the R8X steel trigger unit, because that's like a whole unit machined out of steel, or cast out of steel. But this is in two halves, so you can see this dark black bit here, and then there's this lighter color bit here. I don't know if you can really see that very well. Anyway, after a few hundred or 1,000 rounds or so, this actually starts to separate, in which case the trigger unit will no longer work. So, you know, what I did was I put a little aluminium bar here and tapped and bolted the two halves together. I put some epoxy under there just on the safe side as well. So it's a little bit crude at the moment, but I put like a little stepped kind of block here, because on the WE-M14 you've got there's like a spring spacer between the bottom of the trigger guard and the stock. And of course I had to kind of modify my dimensions a little bit for the M1 stock, so that's what that's for. I could have, you know, painted it or made it a little bit fancier, but it's just there to keep the trigger level when it's in the stock. The other modification I've done is to cut off the bottom of the magazine catch. So that's the top of the magazine catch, which basically keeps the magazine orientated the way it should be, but the bottom was cut off, and I've used the bottom of an ICS M1 Garand magazine, and I've kind of just so you can see the original part there that sits around the M14 magazine. Well, that just basically I've cut down and slotted this over that, and then used some again some car body filler just to kind of smooth the join, so to speak. So that's the trigger unit. The stock, not an awful lot to say about the stock apart from the you know, letting it in a little bit and reshaping for the front end for the real stock ferrule. I did have to take a little bit off of the butt end. I've only got one screw in the butt stock. You would normally have two, but I've only got one in there so that I can change CO2 bulbs easier. So all I have to do is just undo the bottom screw, lift that off, flip it to the side, and the regulator should, there we go, she's starting to crown, pop out. So this is a modified Mancraft regulator. It's modified because they usually have this is like a Gen 1 or Gen 2, I can't remember which it is, but it usually has a blowout valve, which would be there, and a pressure gauge, so it shows you your pressure in bars. Didn't really need to know my pressure, just go off of FPS and, you know, calculate energy based on the weight of the projectile and the muzzle velocity. So that's got an M10 metric M10 just grub screw screwed in there with some like Loctite. It's not going anywhere, and that is a 1/4, it's BSP I think fitting, just brass fitting, which is just screwed in there and again Loctited, and it's not going anywhere. It's got the Mancraft CO2 adapter, and you can see that there's a bulb in there which is already spent. If I was going to do this build again, I'd probably use a different regulator setup, or maybe one of the newer Mancraft units, because this has a habit of just there's like a little like hard I don't know, it's like vulcanized rubber or something like that, grommet in there, which you know, is used to seal against the end of the CO2 bulb, and if it's not seated properly and you try and insert a fresh bulb, it'll just blow out and the CO2 will just vent everywhere, which is a bit annoying. I also I can only get like I think 40 rounds out of a bulb. Now for a semi-automatic DMR, which is what this is, I mean I get like probably about 300 and what was it, something like 310 FPS I think, using a 0.3, maybe about, actually it was about 300 FPS using a 0.32 gram. So we're doing like DMR FPS. So it's obviously locked to semi anyway. I mean you can't put it on auto. So I get 40 rounds out of a full bulb, and this is actually cranked down as far as it will go, so I'm getting max FPS out of this. It's because this isn't really designed to power a system. Well, it's designed to power a BB, but it's not designed to reciprocate a bolt, and the bolt and spring setup on this is quite heavy. I didn't want to mess about with the spring at all, because, you know, as soon as you start messing about with spring weights and powers and what have you, things start to go wrong, and it just won't run. So I just decided that this needs to be cranked up all the way. You know, I can't make any modifications. I can't make it any more powerful than it is. So it's pretty much it's as safe as any kind of like AEG lock to semi-automatic. There is a maximum FPS it can do, and that's under it's under the legal limit. So I'm quite happy with that. The magazine part was the biggest ball ache to do on this, I'll be honest. So this is just cut down M14 magazine. I think that's calipers. So we've got 37mm of original magazine left in there. Actually, even less than that, 32, because it's got a piece of 5mm aluminium epoxied and bolted onto the bottom of here, because underneath that there's just a void where the gas would be, you know, where the magazine kept the way it was. And also getting this BB track set up properly. So that's the original BB track, which I've cut down, and I took the bottom of the track and I pinned it in place, and it holds 8 rounds. In my demonstration video, it holds 8 rounds. It does lock open on empty, and it was just an absolute nightmare to get this working properly with the modified BB track, with the modified trigger unit, with a modified stock. If I was going to give any advice to anybody who wants to do this build as well, I would say don't, because, you know, it cost me quite a lot of money to do. It took me weeks to do, and I'm not a professional, you know, engineer or machinist by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, look at the state of that hacksaw job. It's like a dog's dinner, but it works, you know. And I suppose if you really want a gas blowback M1 Garand that isn't a Marussian that's going to shit itself to death after a couple of clips, then yeah, go for it. But expect it to be a lot of work. But yeah, it's a laugh. Next video up, I will be probably my gas blowback GBBR 43 that I did for my German loadout, if I can actually be bothered to. But I'm currently working on, or rather, Jim at LCS Engineering Outpost is currently working on M16 upper receiver for a Tokyo Marui MWS gas blowback rifle, which I'm turning into a Vietnam era M16. It's going to have the triangular handguards, 3-prong flash hider. It's going to have an XM16E1 style stock and pistol grip, but it will have a full fence lower, because I've seen pictures of kind of like hybrid M16s that weren't like full M16E1s with a birdcage, but they weren't proper XM16E1s that had no fencing. So this is kind of a bit of a hybrid. Anywho, I hope that's of some use to whoever wants to take this build on. I'll try and answer any questions that you may have. Cheers.